So what you're doing for the first 6 months of taking over the property is auditioning to the folks who are already living there as it relates to why they should continue occupying the property and justifying a renewal that reaches market rent if they're below, and why they should stay in their apartment for a price that might be a little bit higher than what they've paid in the past, and justifying that price with the level of service that you've displayed at the property. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another quick solo episode here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to share our 5-step value add process that we use and follow after buying a multifamily property. All right, so in this episode, I'm going to be running through the 5-step process that we follow when we buy a multifamily deal that's got some type of value add component to it. And generally speaking, these 5 steps are what we follow on pretty much every value add deal that we buy. And when I say 5 steps, there's some sub steps underneath these individual steps. But what I'm going to do in this episode is kind of communicate what we do at a high level and the sequencing of how we make decisions surrounding the value add process and why we make those decisions in this order. So let's just jump right into this because there's going to be a little context to each one. So step number 1, post-closing a value add deal, and really this is pre-closing, a couple weeks before closing is when you should start doing this and communicating how we're going to address these post-close with your management company or your internal management team, is assessing and solving the more immediate problems at the property. So this is where we're talking about deferred maintenance. Is there like a heating system or a water heater or an active leak or something that needs to be replaced, solved, addressed immediately? This is also where you would message existing residents and say, hey, we're the new management company or the new owners. Are you having any ongoing maintenance issues in your unit that you would like to see addressed? Now, that question's obviously going to get you a whole slew of responses, especially if you're doing C-class deals. Everything from, yeah, our sink is leaking to, I want a whole new kitchen. Obviously, some things are reasonable, some things aren't. But this gives you an opportunity to at least get in the units, to establish some goodwill with the existing residents, and to address really the more immediate problems, right? And this is basically where we want to stabilize the building, not from like a business plan standpoint, but from like a functional use standpoint. That's really what we're trying to address here. Stuff like pests, all of that. And you want to go ahead and do these things because it's good to get these out of the way before you actually start getting into what's a little bit more downstream in this process. And it's also a great opportunity to begin building the goodwill with the existing residents that are occupying the property. That brings us to step 2, which is exterior and common area improvements, or CapEx. This is where we're going to make our upgrades, not necessarily the things that we have to do from a CapEx standpoint, although some things that you may need to do can help to improve, for example, the exterior common area. If you have to replace the roof because it's leaking, probably also looks like crap. So a new roof is going to make the building look a little bit better. But here is where we're doing painting, window trim, replacing common area doors, maybe doing some exterior landscaping. Maybe this is where we are paving the parking lot. Basically, we're doing everything outside of the units. And the goal is to do this early in the hold because, again, it continues to build goodwill with the residents that are occupying the property. It's really easy to jump into a deal and just want to dive right into, rent increases or, unit renovations, et cetera. Maybe you're just, you take over with a vacant unit and you quickly renovate it, you get it up for lease, but you haven't necessarily done the exterior and the common area yet. That's going to hurt your ability to lease your existing units. It's going to hurt your ability to sign renewals at a higher rate with the existing residents. So step 2, after we accomplish step 1, which is like immediate deferred maintenance, stuff that is important to fix from a life safety, quality of life, just to prevent any further deferred maintenance at the building, is working through our common area and our exterior improvements, stuff like power washing, etc. So if you were to build out like an internal checklist for yourself or for your management company, you probably have all kinds of sub bullet points underneath this, right? Where you have power washing, painting common areas, installing LED light fixtures in the common areas, painting exterior doors, replacing broken windows, although that may be actually step 1, painting window trim, all of these different things. Once we accomplish that, that brings us to step number 3, which is implementing management value add related improvements. So Most notably, this is where we're going to be signing renewals with tenants whose leases have expired, or issuing rent increases, or trying to sign longer term leases with month-to-month residents. This is also when we may be trying to implement some type of fee structure, whether that's parking fees or pet fees or some type of other ancillary fee, maybe you're doing like a trash fee or something like that. But generally speaking, before you go out there and start adjusting the lease terms of the existing residents or offering new leases, you want to take care of steps one and two because you've then built some goodwill with the resident base. If you were to put yourself in their shoes, they're thinking, all right, these are the types of owners who are willing to invest in the property, maybe more so than the previous owners. These are the types of owners who I think are going to take good care of the building moving forward, and therefore I'm a little bit more interested in signing a lease. Maybe at this point you've handled the maintenance request or two in a timely fashion, and now you're showing these folks that if they have something that breaks within their apartment, that they're going to get it fixed quickly. So it's important that this happens third in this sequence of events. But this is where you go out to all the folks who are month to month and maybe give, some notice period saying, hey, if you want to stay month to month, this is your new rent. If you want to sign a lease, we're willing to sign a lease at this rent, et cetera, et cetera. Now, step number four, and again, you may be handling some of this earlier in the process, but it's likely or preferable that you would want to handle this number, fourth in this sequence is renovating and leasing units. So you might be renovating any vacant units that you take over as you're working through steps 1 through 3. Ideally, you're not listing those units for lease until you've accomplished steps 1 and 2 and made the building a little bit more presentable and increased the curb appeal. It's likely, though, that you're going to start accessing units as you start adjusting lease terms or offering leases, rent increases, notices to vacate, whatever you need to do at step 3, right? Maybe you have some problematic residents that are creating issues for other folks in the building, and you need to work through turning over those units as part of your management value add step in the process, step 3. And now you're starting to access units, right? This is where we're going to get in there and actually do our interior unit renovations and lease those units. The challenge is oftentimes you'll turn a unit, right? Let's say you have a light turn, you got paint, flooring, maybe that's it, some fixtures, and you've accomplished that when you take over a vacant unit before you're able to accomplish your exterior and common area CapEx plan. That happens all the time, right? I mean, that's a normal thing that happens in a management value add. I still think that it's helpful to list that unit for lease before you maybe do the other things that you're doing. But ideally, as you're showing that unit, you're showing it while that work is being completed, or your leasing team is communicating that that work is about to be done or is in the process of being done. So folks who are walking your renovated unit or your, newly turned unit understands exactly what else is happening at the property as well. But step number 4 is when we're going to be working through that component of the management value add. Step number 5 is more of an ongoing step. And this is like a 60, 90, 120 day, 6-month kind of post-close step, right? So this is very vague and amorphous, but I'll include it as a step regardless. It's just improving the quality of management longer term. And there's a whole slew of different things that fall into this bucket. Picking up the phone really quickly when a resident calls, leasing more effectively, in terms of accomplishing more showings in a shorter period of time, generating more applications, working through those applications faster, making it easier to submit maintenance requests, and then addressing those maintenance requests as quickly as you possibly can when they do address or when they do submit them, they being residents. You can still improve the quality of management after the first initial stage of your business plan implementation. And this is going to help you with those first batch of renewals that may come up in a multifamily property, right? Let's say you close in July, which is when I'm just recording this and when this will be released. And you have leases that are coming up in October, November, December, whatever it might be. The folks who are under leases, who are living at the property, are going to see what you've done and how you've conducted yourself as a management company between the date of close and, ultimately arriving at their lease expiration. So what you're doing for the first 3-6 months of taking over the property is auditioning to the folks who are already living there as it relates to why they should continue occupying the property and justifying a renewal that reaches market rent if they're below, and why they should stay in their apartment for a price that might be a little bit higher than what they've paid in the past, and justifying that price with the level of service that you've displayed at the property. So this is kind of a little bit more longer term, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the line, what have you. But it's important to understand this as part of the overall management value add process or management component of the value add implementation process, executing a business plan, et cetera. So that when those lease terms do come up or those leases do come up, you can offer terms that align with what you're trying to accomplish from a business plan standpoint. And again, there are all kinds of sub bullet points underneath this particular one, such as offering staggered lease terms. If you have a lease coming up in October, November, December, maybe you want to offer 8, 9, 10-month leases instead of 12-month leases so that you get them back on a better cycle, which at least in the Northeast is the summer leasing cycle. A lot of smaller owners really have a hard time with this. Smaller management companies have a hard time with this. They're very binary in their thinking where it's month to month at this price or a 12-month lease at this price, or they won't even offer month to month at some increase rate. It's like 12 months, here it is, this is what it is. If you stay month to month, we're just going to leave it the same or some other process, right? Getting in the practice of offering different lease terms, even as a small operator, small management company, will help you separate yourself from the competition, and it'll help you put more of your leases on advantageous cycles for you as an owner. So again, there's all kinds of sub bullet points here, but this is kind of the fifth step in the ongoing value add process. And the only other thing I'll mention here is kind of a sub bullet point that I haven't specifically mentioned throughout these five. And in my opinion, this starts to occur when you get to step three, kind of around the management value add, initial management value add components of the process, is really diving into your expenses, finding out where you can save on water, finding out where maybe you can trim on the vendor side. Do you need to do a weekly common area cleaning, or can that be moved to bi-weekly? Is that going to continue to bring the same level of service to the resident? Stuff like that. So that is something that I didn't explicitly mention, but step three, step five is typically where that would fall into. Hopefully, all you multifamily operators out there found this episode helpful. And if you did, please consider leaving the podcast a rating and review, as it helps the show get noticed by more folks. And again, thank you all for listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.